Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Once again, Joe Nice coming to you as always with the live and direct chats on a July 20, 2021. We're broadcasting live and direct on my Facebook page, facebook.com/JoeNiceDJ. We're also broadcasting on YouTube, youtube.com/JoeNiceDJ. If you want to follow me on all of my socials, you can see them there. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at JoeNiceDJ. We are also going to be rebroadcasting today's interview on the Tastemakers Radio channel on the Dash Radio Networks. Proud to be involved with them. And there's the information there, dashradio.com/tastemakers, or also on Instagram at tastemakers_radio and at Dash Radio. And today we have a very, very incredibly special guest, main man Shareef Snuggs. Shareef Snuggs in the building. Brother, I'm honored that you took an hour out of your busy day and your schedule to chop it up with me for 60 minutes. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
Absolutely.
Hey, cheers, brother. Tell everybody about yourself, please.
Yeah, so I'm a father of two, also an inspiring filmmaker. I went to Digital Film Academy for 1 year, a conservatory. I mainly went there to get gear. Anyone who knows anything about filming, if you do a podcast, whatever, the gear is expensive. Sure. So that conservatory was offering in their program free gear if you actually complete their program. So now since COVID is opening up, if I want to go back to the school, grab some gear, I can shoot. Film has been my passion since I was young. I also went to LaGuardia Community College. I've actually I won a few awards for screenwriting. Writing is actually something it's kind of more my forte. Even though I do inspire to be a filmmaker, actual director. How I got involved with activism was last year. Like most people, when the pandemic hit, I just stayed home, watched like Jimmy Dore, watched Graham Elwood, watched a lot of the left-leaning podcast shows like I've been a fan of since forever. And, they inspired me, particularly Graham Elwood, Rob McCall, Lee Camp, Jimmy Dore, those four, I usually call them my horsemen. They inspired me to get off the couch. And what kind of like I always tell people what was the initial okay, I need to get up and be more proactive in my community was when Bernie said now wasn't time for Medicare for all. So that for me was an awakening. And I said that COVID is much of an awakening. And I feel like that for me was more of an awakening, not being a passive observer, actually being more engaged. Yeah. But I didn't know what to do, like most people. So I stayed home, social distance, wear a mask and, follow all the procedures and guidelines. But then when Force to Vote happened, in my mind, I was like, well, this might be the strategy, because we always hear in politics, there's some backroom deals, there's some strategies, there's some I do something for you, you do something for me sort of thing. So I thought, well, maybe when Bernie said now wasn't time, maybe that's what he was talking about. I have something in the works. Be patient, So that's why I was thinking more or less that's what he was getting at. Maybe that was like a code almost. And then when Force to Vote happened, and that turned out to what it is, I was like, well, I need to be more proactive. This is right. Yes. And then so I joined the Force to Vote Slack. I joined Rise and Resist. That's an organization in New York. I joined the Revolution Slack. I joined the Sunrise Slack, People's Party Slack. There's so many different organizations I was trying to reach out to, and I wasn't reaching leadership. I was talking to members who are very engaged, like the way we dialogue right now. They dialogue in the Slack. They talk about these issues that we're having right now. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't reaching anyone, for lack of better words, who can say, okay, tomorrow we can go do a march. Sure. I wasn't reaching those people. I was reaching regular folks like you and me. Right. And because I was frustrated because I couldn't reach those people, I couldn't call anyone up and say, hey, can we do a march tomorrow? Right. I met Ricky Dunlop on the Force to Vote Slack, who's also a co-organizer with me in Savage Joy for the DC March. Correct. And him and I was vibing, we was building, and we went out and protested in front of the AOC's office several times during Force to Vote to get her to say, will you answer the call? Will you do something about this? We're asking for Speaker Pelosi to put a floor vote. Right. We're not asking for you to get Medicare for. We're just asking, we just want to vote. And that didn't happen. And then we went further from not from forced to vote to applying pressure to her to actually get her to do something. Won't answer her phone, won't answer her email. She doesn't show up to her office. We was literally like handing out flyers, getting people to contact her, make a big noise, make a big splash, because she's my congresswoman. You know, people always say, why do you shit on AOC so much? Well, this is my district. I live here. There's no one else for me to contact. I live in Jackson Heights. This is my area. This is my house. Yep. So like, I can't contact anybody else. She's my congresswoman. So I don't have an option. And so Renee Johnson, who was part of the People's Party, she was a New York coordinator.
Yes.
She's also been inspirational to me in helping me with activism. So I learned a lot from Ricky and from Renee and a lot of people I encounter. So what I like to do, because I'm still new to this, I ask a lot of questions. I just take a lot of notes and just ask people like, okay, what is this strategy? What do you do here? What do you do there? And a lot of it is just me just paying attention, just taking notes. So I do shoot from the hip. I don't really like have like experience. A lot of people say, you're so good at this. Like, you know, I always tell people I'm flattered because I'm just vibing with people and just listening to these stories. Because a lot of people who are in the Slack, these are the folks who are most disenfranchised. They do have their terminal. They do have a lot of preconditions. So when you talk to them and you engage with them, they're going to stop and talk to you because you're giving them the attention that they want. These politicians are not doing that. So if somebody in our group, a lot of our people in our group, like Savage Joy, who do have, you know, a disability,
yes,
you know, they're not being heard. So this is why we was able to grow this movement the way it is. Because a lot of people think that, you know, they give me a lot of credit. I'm not being humble. It's hard for me to take credit for something that COVID did. You know what I mean? It's really difficult to pretend that COVID wasn't like an eye-opening experience for a lot of people. A lot of folks lost their job. A lot of folks
had to change careers.
Changing careers. They're out of work. They don't have money. They don't have health care.
Right.
So they hear a march. I'm game. I'll sign up. I'll help out. You know what I mean? So like, it's not so much me, and I'm not taking anything credit off myself or all the organizers who do have a lot of experience. We also have to pay attention to the climate that we're in right now. And why it's growing so fast is because these people are not being heard from a bunch of different reasons, not just healthcare, right. A lot of reasons. So they're using it as an outlet. This is like therapy for them, for lack of a better word. This is a chance for them to say, well, maybe this one issue, someone will listen to me. Maybe I'll get an answer, you know? And so it's snowballed, and it's snowballing now to the point where Laura Feldman for Red Berets got involved. Ho Washington got involved. Savage Joy got involved. You know, so many different ladies and so many different organizations and so many different different groups are just signing up because not only because the climate, not only because it's the right issue, is because they're also starting to realize that. And I talked to Andre Stackhouse, who's also organizing Seattle March.
Yes.
Me and him and I had a prior discussion about no one is answering. No one's picking up the phone. And during COVID. And I said, I know. And I said, this is why this is happening. And, you know, we spoke about this. And he says, maybe, you know, he was even saying that, you know, you're acknowledging something that I think a lot of people are starting to slowly pick up on. Right. That their politician is not answering them. So even to this day, the Progressive Caucus hasn't came out and addressed the march. And that to me isn't like an ego thing, like I need them to address this, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about that. I really don't. I need them to address the American people. I'm out here because I want them to be helped, to be helped. I don't care about whether or not they highlight the march or whatever. Like there's a friend of mine who has a march in her area, and she was like, oh, this march is not connected to you guys. I was like, okay, go to that one. Please do. Seriously, amplify. If other people want to have a march in their community, in their area, is not associated with March for Medicare for All, that to me is still a win. That's success to me, personally.
Agreed.
I can't speak for anybody else on my team. I'm speaking for myself, because any form of amplification for Medicare for All in this country is a victory, in my opinion, because you're just making it louder. You're just really getting louder, and you're just really making the establishment more annoyed at the fact that this is something that is beyond just one of us. It's a movement now that's not going to be ignored. We're not going to go away because you don't answer us. We do have next steps. You know, we do have next steps. So
exactly. Exactly. And Shareef, and thank you for sharing all of that in the first 10 minutes of this conversation. I appreciate that. And I didn't say it like that to say, damn, this brother's talking for 10 minutes. No, I mean, I just happen to look at the clock. It's a DJ thing. It's that internal clock, internal timing. But
I love that.
yeah, me too. And you bring up so many brilliant points in everything you just said in your soliloquy over the past 10 minutes, because it makes sense. The politicians, the elected members of Congress, all 538 of them, all of them have essentially turned their back on the American people. They all have, in the middle of a pandemic. And that this, again, regardless of what people think about Jimmy Dore, it was an absolute masterstroke on Jimmy Dore's behalf to outsmart all of the Washington staffers and force the progressives in the House of Representatives to force Nancy Pelosi to give Medicare for all a floor vote in the House of Representatives. This was not implement Section 1881A of the Social Security Act to give everybody a Medicare for all now because of a public health emergency. This wasn't repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. This was none of that. This was essentially do your jobs.
Right.
Do your jobs. And the beauty of everything that's happening with the Medicare for all, the March for Medicare for All now, is this coalition of people, this collection of citizens marching across the country. It transcends political ideology, because one of the speakers at the Washington, D.C. rally is Dr. Joe Jarvis. Dr. Joe Jarvis is a Republican, and he's like, Medicare for all. Yeah, we should have this. Absolutely. We should have this. So it does, and this idea that Medicare for all is only something that Democrats or liberals want and Republicans and or conservatives don't want is far from the case, right? Because there's an overwhelming amount of support from conservatives for Medicare for all, just as much as there are Democrats for Medicare for all, and Green Party members, independents, etc. So the idea that Medicare for all needs to be politicized is number one, false. And number two, it takes away from the movement of the people that we have right now and that we will have in the streets on Saturday marching for Medicare for all.
It's a distraction.
Totally is.
To politicize a basic human right, it takes away from, it takes the humanity away from the issue.
Agreed.
And it makes it issue like, this is your fault why you don't have this.
Right.
And that's what it's doing. And people will be surprised of how many, like you said, how many political parties are in the coalition. It's very surprising to me. Because again, like I said, I'm new to all this. And I usually hear like, Republicans and Democrats don't work together, but we have so many Republicans and Democrats in the coalition. So like, I just find that funny when people say that, because again, I think that it comes down to the fact that they're coming together for one particular issue they both agree on. And It shows that it's leadership that's the problem, not the members. Something, again, I was talking about earlier, when you go speak to average Americans, whether they're Republican or Democrat, blue collar people on the street, who you meet at your Dunkin' Donuts or whatever, we're having a coffee. If you just talk to them and just say, hey, do you support this policy? They're most likely going to say yes, 100%.
Right.
You're not going to say no, because they're in the shit with you. They see it day to day. They know what the problems are.
They know what the problems are.
Right. So they're not going to say that. Maybe somebody like, again, who's in leadership, they're going to tell you something different, because again, it goes with money. So that's money is the class divide. It's not so much with healthcare. You know what I mean? It's not more the social issues that we're talking about. It mostly affects the working class. And that's what it's really come down to. It's a class issue. It's about who has money, who doesn't.
Agreed. And there's something you said a few minutes ago that I wanted to offer a slightly different perspective on. Sure, when you said that Democrats and Republicans don't normally work together. I would disagree with that.
No, I do too.
Because Democrats and Republicans are really good about not giving Americans health care. They're really good about continuing to fund the military. They're really good about not doing anything about the human rights violations in Israel. they're really good about mass surveillance. They're really good about not defunding the police. So there's plenty of instances where Democrats and Republicans are in lockstep regardless of political ideology. And quite honestly, and I've said this on several interviews, podcasts, etc., I've said that Republicans and Democrats are essentially one and the same. The only main difference is Republicans are honestly dishonest.
Right.
Democrats are dishonestly dishonest.
Yeah.
And this might sound sacrilegious or blasphemous, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway because we have an open forum to say whatever the hell we want. I would almost prefer Donald Trump being president than Joe Biden.
Oh, agreed.
The reason why I'm 100%. Saying that is because
100%.
At least with the mainstream media of the United States, they focused their energy on hating Donald Trump, which made identification of the opposition considerably easier. And you had more people in the streets fighting for their basic human rights and humanity, freedom, equality, and survival. With Joe Biden, we saw this coming. Everybody went back to brunch. Everything's, it's okay. Everything's all right. Nothing to see here. And we'll do the same nefarious activities that Donald Trump got away with that liberal media said, oh, he's the worst president of all time. How could you go ahead and lock these kids in cages at the border? But then when Joe Biden does it, oh, no, it's okay. They're just there in temporary detention centers until we can find their parents, knowing full well that you're not looking for those parents at all because you separated those kids from their parents.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Trump, the reason why Trump is a problem for the establishment because he exposes the mass.
Agreed.
He exposes the mass. That is all bullshit. And both of them are awful, but obviously Biden is a problem because people go back to sleep, like you said. People go back to brunch and they're not paying attention and not going and that's why they had to hurry and get him out. Because he's a problem.
Yeah.
People bring up the fact that we got more money, stimulus money with Trump than we get with Biden, but at the same time, I agree with that. But at the same time, I personally feel that that was more of a cover for me than Trump's trying to like win an election. Because I feel like Trump could have won if he just told people to wear masks. That's just me personally.
Ooh. You know what, Shareef? I've been saying this for months with Kat from Joe when we do our Kat with Joe and Kat chats. This past presidential election was the easiest presidential election to win in the history of my lifetime because all either political candidate had to do was say, "I'm going to bring the troops home. I'm going to legalize weed. I'm going to keep you at your house. I'm going to give you health care. I'm going to cancel student loan debt. And I'm going to put money in your pocket." If either political candidate had done or promised any of those 6 political talking points I just gave you, they win that election in a landslide.
Yeah, if Trump made America mask and gave them out free for people,
oh boy,
it would have been over. He would have won.
Wrap.
It would have been a
wrap.
Joe Biden would have been ready for that. He wouldn't have been ready for that.
Joe Biden would have had no chance. And I guarantee you this, and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are the reasons we have Joe Biden in the White House right now.
100%.
Because they blocked much of what Trump was trying to do with the stimulus bill that he wanted to pass. And the stimulus bill that he wanted to pass was $1,200 up front and $400 a week. And I think the $400 a week was until election day, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that.
It was going to be for a while.
Right.
Then a bunch of us went without stimulus money for a while. We were promised $400 a week and $2,000 checks. We get $1,400 checks and $300 a week. And in many Republican-led gubernatorial states, much of the $300 a week has ended. And the eviction moratoriums have not been extended. There still is not a federal jobs program. And there's still loads of people that can't find work. And the stimulus money and the stimulus packages end on September 7, if I'm not mistaken. And here we are in July 20. So we have the rest of July and all of August and the first week of September. And we'll see what happens after that.
You know what kills me too? People are celebrating about this child stimulus check we're doing now, which is insulting.
Yep.
Because there's not enough money for any child. And Furthermore, people, again, the cover, people not recognizing that they're saying, oh, we're not going to give money to you, we're going to give money to your kids, and we're going to continue that. But again, that's just more of a way of them saying, fuck you, leave me alone, don't stop bothering me about the fact that you're poor and you're working class and you don't have anything. Go out there and figure it out. That's what that is. That's how I look at that check. I don't look at it as like a win. You know what I mean? That's not a win. Anyone who's celebrating that, I think that's crazy.
And I remember the couple of days after Election Day happened, and there was a rally in Raleigh, North Carolina at the State House, and there were people jumping up and down celebrating Joe Biden's victory. And I'm scratching my head.
In the streets in New York.
And my daughter was with me, and my daughter, she's my beloved daughter. It was 9 then. She's 10 now. She's like, Daddy, why are people happy? I'm like, baby, I'm not happy about this at all. I'm not happy about this at all. I don't know why these people are jumping up and down celebrating. For what? What are you celebrating? And I came to the conclusion that people weren't celebrating a Joe Biden victory. People were celebrating a Donald Trump loss.
Right.
That's what people were celebrating.
Right.
If your celebration is the lesser of two evils one, then you have far bigger problems in your political infrastructure than whoever actually wins the presidency of the United States.
100%.
You've totally lost the plot at that point.
100%. Also, too, Joe Biden, in my opinion, again, not the fact that we talked about earlier about we'd rather Trump than Joe Biden because of the revealing of the mask of the system.
Yes.
But politically speaking, as a politician, Joe Biden, in my opinion, is worse. He's been in politics longer. He's done more damage. If you just look at his entire record, he's done more damage. So for anyone who's celebrating that, it's like, just go back and look at who wrote the crime bill. Just go back to the fact that under his administration, or the Obama administration, people in Flint still don't have clean water.
Bingo.
Yep. Look at the fact that who started genocide in Yemen under the Obama administration. He's also responsible for that. And look right now about the war we have in Palestine. Who started that?
That's. I mean, when people say that Trump was worse, look at all this. And I talked about this when I was at the Andrew Brown Jr. rallies in Elizabeth City on April 28th or 29th. I even said this. I said, look, Joe Biden voted against busing alongside Strom Thurmond, who was a noted segregationist.
Yep.
And let's not forget, I think in the 1956 presidential election, Strom Thurmond ran for president under the Dixiecrat Party. And the Dixiecrat Party was a party that supported segregation.
Right.
We support ahead and read it. Look it up.
Right.
Joe Biden wrote the crack law, the 1988 Anti-Drug Act, which instituted mandatory minimum sentencing for drug offenses. He wrote the Omnibus Crime Bill of 1994. He supported the Supreme Court nominations of Justices Antonin Scalia and Clarence Thomas. And by the way, Clarence Thomas is the longest serving Supreme Court justice on the bench now. Wow. And this August, I think, or September, will be 30 years that Clarence Thomas has been on the bench.
Wow.
30 years. And let's not forget when Biden, at the time when he supported the nominations of Justice Antonin Scalia and Clarence Thomas, Joe Biden was the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So he was the person in charge of making sure these people get appointed or not. And during that Supreme Court nomination, Anita Hill had a credible accusation against Clarence Thomas. And Joe Biden essentially embarrassed Anita Hill in front of the entire world and completely disrespected and discredited Anita Hill. Joe Biden wrote the RAVE Act of 2002, which is about more drug legislation. Joe Biden also wrote the Counterterrorism Act of 1995. And a lot of people don't remember the Counterterrorism Act of 1995 because it never got passed in Congress. But when September 11th, 2001 happened 6 years later, President Bush at the time contacted Joe Biden and said, hey, let's dust off that Counterterrorism Act that you wrote. Let's put more money into it for policing and military-grade weaponry. Let's create an entire new Department of Security called the Department of Homeland Security, and let's give this act a new name, and let's call it the Patriot Act. So, the Joe Biden helped to write NAFTA, which destroyed the working class and caused more damage to the working class. The only piece of legislation that destroyed the working class more than NAFTA is the Taft-Hartley Act of 1947. He supported the repeal of Glass-Steagall, which was the firewall between banking, between commercial banking and mortgage lending. So Joe Biden did all sorts of stuff. He supported the Affordable Care Act. He supported fracking.
Yep.
He's against the Green New Deal. He's against Medicare for all. Joe Biden, and again, I'm 45 years old.
No, listen to this. You spoke for probably about 10 minutes on Joe Biden. I can't even speak 10 minutes about Donald Trump's record. I can't even do that. Think
about it. You know, I mean, right. Joe Biden supported every war in the Middle East, including the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Joe Biden not only supported the bankruptcy laws, but he supported the addendums to the bankruptcy laws, which prevented medical debt and student loan debt from being discharged by bankruptcy. Joe Biden did that too. And let's not forget, Joe Biden is also the sponsor of the Civil Asset Forfeiture Law Bill of 1984. So the reason why police can come and take your shit, even though you have not been suspected of a crime or involved in any criminal activity, that's Joe Biden. Joe Biden co-sponsored and wrote that bill also. So when people talk about Joe Biden, oh, well, Donald Trump, he's this. Oh, no. Trump's terrible. Trump is an impatient jackass that didn't know how government worked. Listen to all the stuff I just talked about with Joe Biden. Joe Biden is considerably worse than Donald Trump. And if not 100%. For a few thousand votes here and there in a few counties and a few jurisdictions, Trump will be president now and not Joe Biden. Joe Biden was Weekend at Bernie's, if you remember that movie where he was.
I do. Right. Right.
That's Joe Biden.
Right. That is Joe Biden.
That's Joe Biden. We couldn't even get a competent, warm body to be president of the United States. No.
They could have picked anybody. They could have picked Elizabeth Warren. They could have picked what's his other idiot? Pete Buttigieg, Wine Cave Pete. They could have had him. You got any idiot to take him. They picked Joe Biden because of his record.
They picked
because of his record. Because he would say yes. That's why
he'll say yes.
He's the most corruptible out of all of them. He says, "What do you want? Let's do it. Let's do it."
And let's not forget, Joe Biden was Obama's vice president. So for everything that Obama did, Joe Biden rode shotgun.
Right, exactly.
So Obama took this country from 2 wars to 7. People don't remember that. Nope. Obama and Biden destroyed Libya. They ran out of bombs in Syria and created the refugee crisis from 6 or 7 years ago. Biden and Obama did all of that. Biden and Obama repealed habeas corpus. They opened the Arctic to drilling, not once but twice. They helped make the Bush tax cuts permanent. They tortured Chelsea Manning. They
also started Black Lives Matter. That started under the Obama administration, which no one ever brings that up. They will say Obama is the reason for that. I remember when that started.
Yeah. So it's again, when people talk about Biden and Trump, and I know we're getting way off topic because
it relates.
But it all comes together because it's something that I said in an interview actually last week with Jody Newell from Real Progressives in Action. I talked about the Affordable Care Act and how everybody thinks that the Affordable Care Act was a democratically controlled and created piece of legislation, when it certainly was not. That was essentially Mitt Romney's mass care that was passed on a national scale. And the architects of Mitt Romney's mass care was the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank. So a conservative think tank gave America a quote unquote democratic healthcare plan. Care to guess what healthcare plan everybody would have had if Mitt Romney was elected president in 2008 instead of Barack Obama? You would have had the same exact healthcare plan, but instead of calling it Obamacare, you would have called it Romney Care. Same 100%. Exact situation.
100%.
Same exact situation, which goes against what you said about 20 minutes ago, how Democrats and Republicans, how you said that Democrats and Republicans don't work together. Well, they work together.
No, I do.
They work together to give us this shitty healthcare legislation.
No, I hear like other people who have more political quote unquote have more political experience than I do. They was like, they always say like, this is something that Republicans and Democrats really don't do. And I said, well, in our coalition, we're a broad coalition. We're nonpartisan,
yes,
and we have so many different people from all walks of life in our group.
Absolutely.
So when people say that doesn't make sense to me. I was like, that doesn't make sense to me, because again, average folks on the street, if you ask them what party you represent, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat or whatever, blah blah blah.
Yep.
But if you also ask them if they're for Medicare for all, most of them are going to say absolutely. 100%. 100%.
Exactly. 100%. And I want to start talking about the Medicare for All marches, because they're coming up this Saturday, and we're filming this on July 20. The marches are taking place July 24, and there are 52 demonstrations taking place across the country. Not all of them are marches like the ones that we have in Seattle or in Washington, D.C. or Los Angeles. Some of them, for example, in Greensboro, North Carolina, is just a car caravan.
Right.
That's important. That matters also.
That does matter. Any form of civil disobedience. So I tweeted it out yesterday, and I also made a comment about this over the weekend.
And by the way, what are you on Twitter, by the way? What's your social media again?
At I am the number 4 M4A. I am for Medicare for All.
Okay, yeah. Perfect. I do have that here somewhere, but we'll put it in the chat later on. But keep going. Yes.
Yeah. So I said this, like, think about this on Saturday. Millions of us, we're not watching Netflix. We're not going to the ball game. We're not going to the club. We're going to the street. We're hitting the streets to talk about healthcare justice. So for me, that already is upsetting the duopoly. That's already upsetting the establishment, because we're not going back to brunch. You know what I mean? We're actually literally going out there talking about why we don't have healthcare in this country. That's important. So whether it's a car caravan, whether we're doing a visual, whether you guys are sharing healthcare stories, you're having a march, you're having a rally, whatever it is, you're going out there, you're telling the establishment, I'm going to take time of my day not be a cog in the wheel. I'm going to get off the cog, and I'm going to literally, tell you why we need healthcare in this country. That's important. That to me that's invaluable to no end. I don't think people realize how important that is, because they don't want you to do that. They want you to keep going. They want you to kind of like not pay attention, have your Netflix, have your PlayStation 4, and go to brunch and just not pay attention and just stay locked into the matrix. And the fact that you're saying that I'm not going to do that, it's a problem. You don't know. I don't think people realize that the fact that even participating for me is like groundbreaking for me, because we got so many different people coming out. Like the onboarding for these volunteers is astounding. It's astounding to me. We're getting so many volunteers for DC and for Seattle and for all the other states. It's like crazy to me. Like, we're trying to raise funds, and like we're just getting people to just say, hey, I'll help. What do you need? What do you need? And so that's incredible.
It really is honestly incredible. And I know I can speak to this from personal experience, because I'm in all of those Sunday general meetings at 12 o'clock Eastern and those Monday night 7 p.m. marketing meetings that I've been involved with since, I want to say, late April or early May. So believe me, I understand. And originally this march, supposedly, I mean, you can speak to the history of the march of this whole movement, quite honestly, better than I can. But this march supposedly was just going to be in Washington, D.C.
Right. It was just going to be one march. So when me and Ricky first talked about it, we was like saying me and Ricky first talked about it, and then we tried to get a team together. So that was Edie joined the team. So the original 5 for the march was me, Ricky, Edie, Dan, and Tony.
Yes.
So Tony was there. He was working on the website. Edie and Dan was more on the side of like making sure all the paperwork and making sure helping all the organizers. While me and Ricky was doing all the boots on the ground stuff.
Sure.
Reaching out to speakers, making sure the mobilizer is good. So we were doing all the other legwork and stuff, because there's so much work that goes into this. So we literally started with one march, and then one of our members was asking, well, how are you going to afford to get people to go to DC? And so this is something that we was kind of thinking about. Right. And then ultimately, other people started asking, is there going to be a march in our city or over here? So he was asking about marches, and he was like, and then I really was saying that that's how we solved the problem. We we don't try to get people to go to DC. We try to get people to go to their own city march.
Perfect.
And so, and a lot of my friends have a lot of opinions about this. Some of my friends says that you're sucking out of the oxygen out of the room. It was like, you want to get everyone in DC. I said, no, I said, my instincts are telling me, my instincts has been telling me that the best way to solve this issue is to make it a national event.
Brilliant.
Instead of, because I feel like if you do it in one location, it just says, oh, a little group of people over here are angry. But everyone across the country is marching. Now is a crisis. Now it's fire. Now you can say you can yell fire and it means something. Versus over here, it's not a big deal. Like one state doing something. I mean, well, DC is not a state, but my point is that if you do it in one area, it doesn't hold much weight of a whole country doing it. Because now Seattle's going to have 1,000 people, over 1,000 easily. LA's gonna have over 1,000. New York's gonna have over 1,000. DC is definitely gonna have over 1,000. Chicago's gonna have over 1,000 easily. Even Phoenix is gonna have over about 500 people or so. And it's hot in Phoenix, so you got that many people gonna come out in Phoenix on a hot day. That's saying something. So it's powerful. It's powerful stuff.
It is. And there's a line from a Bruce Springsteen song called "Dancing in the Dark," where Bruce Springsteen said, "Can't have a fire without a spark." And the spark came from you, Ricky, Edie, Dan, Josh. And this part of that spark also came from the people that were there at that park behind the buildings at the House of Representatives on January 3 and January 4.
Absolutely.
A lot of that, and
a lot of people don't realize, Joe, and you was part of that too. A lot of those folks are in the movement. They're with us. They're here. They really are. Like a lot of the forced to vote people, a lot of people who came to DC in January, so many of them has been super supportive, very helpful. That spirit of forced to vote hasn't died. This is the second, in my opinion, I like it as the second forced to vote.
It's an extension of, again, I think a lot of people forgot that the reason why that march in DC happened was because of Jackson Hinkle.
Right.
And Jackson was the guy that said, that was like, look, I'm going to do something about this. And again, they put it out, they were on Twitter on his talk show. And next thing you know, there were 35 or 40 people that showed up. Colin, who's watching the show right now, out to Colin, we'll see him on Saturday in DC. I think Ricky was there, Nick Brana was there from the people, just a lot of people showed up. And then Savage Joy was there. Lee Camp walked over because he lives in DC. Brianna Joy Gray was there. John Farina from Status Quo. Nico was there. Christina Levo drove up with Nico. Christina Levo is one of the guest speakers at one of the marches in Florida. I think it's Miami, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's Orlando.
Orlando. Yeah, either Miami or Orlando. I can't remember which one. But yeah, she drove up with Nico. Pasta was there. Fiorella was there. Frank from Frank Analysis. So I mentioned a lot of YouTubers because a lot of them understood the importance of having boots on the ground, but they also
they're the real ones. They actually give a shit, and they're the real ones. They give a shit. They know.
They know, and they care. And there were a lot of people there that, again, I was there. There were about 35 to 40 of us, and I remember on the Sunday, not just Saturday, but the Sunday, when we were on the back steps of the first of the three buildings that makes up the House of Representatives. And to give everybody an idea of the geography of that area, if you remember what happened 2 days after, which was the insurrection at the Capitol building, if you're facing the Capitol building, or if you remember seeing the insurrection and you're looking at the Capitol building, the buildings to the right of the Capitol building, there are three buildings there. Those are the buildings that are that house all 435 members of the House of Representatives and their staff, etc. So and that is Independence Avenue. That's Independence Avenue. I think it's Constitution Avenue on the left side, Independence Avenue on the right. So we're at Independence Avenue and on the back side of that street. And there's a few of us standing there with megaphones and signs. 10 cops show up, get off these steps. We're like, yo, First Amendment rights. We have a right to stand here. Next thing you know, 15 other cops show up. There were probably 25 cops for 35 to 40 activists that were not looking to, to having a vigil for Julian Assange, not on Pentagon property asking to defund the military. We were asking for the progressive members of the House of Representatives to force the vote, to withhold their vote for Nancy Pelosi to become Speaker of the House until Nancy Pelosi agrees to have a floor vote for Medicare for all on the House of Representatives. And all these police officers show up. But 48 hours later, all hell broke loose and the cops were nowhere to be seen.
Nowhere to find.
And you know this because of some of the meetings that we've had to get all of the permits. There are 29 different police organizations in Washington, D.C. And just to get the permits for the march that we're involved with in Washington, D.C., we've had to call, 4 or 5 or 6 different police jurisdictions?
Right. It's 5 police jurisdictions. So that's the Metropolitan Police, D.C. Police, the Metropolitan Police, the Capitol Police, the National Parks, Supreme Court Police, and the Metro Police.
Metro Police. Yep. Right. Yeah. And I'm sorry I couldn't attend the meeting today.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
I had a bunch of other.
Yeah, that would we had to finalize that with the National Park Police. Next is the Supreme Court, and then next is also the Metro Police.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So I mean, just to give you an idea, that's 5 different police jurisdictions that we had to contact to secure all of the permits for a 1.8 mile march route this coming Saturday. Right. 5 different, and they all had to sign off on them. All of them.
Right.
So when we talk about defunding the police and the over-policing of the United States, again, I didn't know until we had that one meeting about a month ago that the Supreme Court had their own police.
Right. And they have their own jail, too. And they have their own jail cell, too. It's crazy.
Yeah. I had no idea. I knew there was a bunch of different police organizations in D.C. For example, any college and or university will have their own police. So Howard, University of D.C., George Washington, Gallaudet, Georgetown, American University. That's 6 colleges and universities right there in D.C. They're all going to have their own police. In addition to the other ones we just mentioned, Secret Service, National Park Police. There's a bunch of other police organizations that are in Washington, D.C. And then those are the ones that we know about.
Right.
Those are the ones that we know about. And there's 29 of them. There might be more that we don't know about. And when we talk about defunding the police and getting back to Joe Biden and how money can be found to fund the military, money can be found to build jails. Perfect example of this is Washington, D.C.'s mayor, Muriel Bowser. Muriel Bowser went ahead and paid to have those yellow letters on Black Lives Matter Plaza painted. She paid the money for that. But at the same time, when it actually comes to having Black Lives Matter, for example, defunding the police or not trying to have a $500 million juvenile jail built in Washington, D.C., her lips are sealed and she's hands off. So
because they got money for kids to paint on the floor. Yeah, we don't have money for the kids to give them health care. We don't have money for the kids to, to make sure they're protected. Because something I always tell people, cops are mercenaries. That's what they are. They're not a protection racket. They're not there to protect you. They're there to protect the oligarchs. Yep. The oligarchs sends the cops to keep you in line. They're not there to serve and protect the community. They're not an integral part of the community. Cops look at you like a virus. They need to make sure they have to contain you or destroy you. Yes. They're going to do one of the 2 things to you. That's it. That's one of the 2 things.
And let's not forget the reason we have police is because police were the direct descendants of slave patrols. And
which a lot of people think there's like they give wiggle room to that, and there's no wiggle room to that because the same group of people for slave patrol who went to go hunt Native Americans, who were bodyguards, who was basically marshals or anything like that for people of the wealth class are all in the same unit. So maybe someone was a slave catcher and then maybe someone went to go hunt Native Americans. That industry of those folks eventually adopted the police force that we have today. All those units, all those different groups formed the police we have today. So when
the DNA is the same.
Right, exactly. So for those people who are saying, well, not really, no, it does. It's 100%. We didn't have a police force in the United States until after that. That wasn't a thing. We didn't have that. If you had an issue, you grabbed the gun and you solved it yourself. So we didn't have that. The people who had money hired hands, because that's what cops are. That's what they did. They would say, oh, go get this, or go get that, or go protect this, or go protect that. That's who became the police force we have today. So this idea that that's not true, that's wrong. That's completely inaccurate.
It's totally inaccurate. And I firmly agree with you. It's totally inaccurate. And again, when we talk about the government not being able to provide basic human services for its people, food, shelter, water, clean water at that. Look at what happened in Flint. Look at what's happening in Athens, Georgia, with the pipes being consistently bursting and people having swamp foot in that area. Look at the people that don't have clothing. We're talking, again, I mentioned this in Jody's interview, basic level stuff on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Another one of those basic level needs, or really a safety need, is healthcare.
Right.
And
if it's not affecting the ruling class, they don't care. I guarantee you, if Flint was an affluent area, that would not be a problem. I promise you that. That would never happen in an area where Jeff Bezos lives, or Bill Gates lives, or like Oprah lives, or Michael Jordan lives. Any area that's affluent and have wealth there, they can protect that class. That class is protected. They don't have that issue.
You know what, Shareef? I'll go even a step further, and there is proof and precedence for this. I won't even say an area that has mostly affluent people. I will say an area that has mostly white people. And here's why I'm saying that. Because if you understand anything about the history involving Lincoln County, Montana, and the reason why Section 1881 Alpha of the Social Security Act was enacted, people don't understand the demographics of Lincoln County, Montana. There are exactly 12 Black people, according to the latest demographics that I ended up reading to understand everything that was happening in Lincoln County, Montana, where Libby is located. There are 12 Black people in that entire county. 12. That county is almost entirely white, and the income is not that great because it's a small county in Montana. You're not going to make a whole lot of money there. It's not like you're living in Howard County, Maryland, for example, which has one of the highest per capita, which has, I think, the second or third highest per capita household income in the United States. It's not Fairfax County, Virginia, or Prince William County in Virginia, or Montgomery County in Maryland, or Prince George's County in Maryland, where they're all counties around the Capital Beltway that have high per capita household incomes. No, this is a county that has a relatively low per capita household income. But the reason why they were able to get Medicare Parts A and B for everybody in that county for the rest of their lives, it's not necessarily because of their income, it's because they're white people. And it's the same reason why Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean water. It's the same
Flint mostly minority too?
Say again, please?
Flint has a lot of minorities?
Flint is mostly Black people, yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
Flint is mostly Black people. It's a reason why parts of the west side of Baltimore still have lead paint. And it's not because these people are affluent. It's far from it. It's because these people are not white. That's what it is. It's the same sort of. There's a reason why there are migrant worker communities in farming areas across the country that are subject to different types of cancer as a result of pesticides. In farming communities in California, in Florida, there's a reason why some of these workers who work in the livestock industry on the eastern shore of Maryland, mostly chicken, end up having diseases as a result of consistent exposure to chicken and livestock excrement. And then some of that runoff affects the water table in these particular areas, and then you have areas that don't have clean water because of sewage runoff. That's the sort of environmental racism that is an extension of wealth inequality in the United States.
That's a conversation that a lot of people remiss to talk about, especially members of my family, members of my own community. We're so focused on police brutality, and I'm not saying that police brutality is not an issue. And because that's direct. We see like how police engagement with African American, Black, and poor brown people. We see so we can automatically say, okay, that's racist. But no one talks about, for example, I always bring this up. I live in Queens, and we don't have as many hospitals. We used to have a lot of hospitals. We only have 2 now where I used to live, and we used to have 4. Mm-hmm. And like no one kind of looks at that being a racial issue. They look at it as something, oh, like, well, we just can't afford hospitals in this community. So they just look at it like that. They look at it like, they don't look at it as like, well, the hospitals got removed and we put a Starbucks there, or we put a condo there, or we put an apartment there, or we put a garage there, or we put like a Burger King there. So they look at it from that perspective. They don't look at it as a racial issue, which I do, but everyone else look at it as something else. And then we bring that up, they look at you like, what are you talking about?
Well, you know what? It is a racial issue because, and I've said this before, racism is a function of economics.
Right.
So when you talk about the wealth inequality and you talk about the reason why many of these hospitals weren't available, especially when New York City was the epicenter of the pandemic in the United States. And the main reasons for that are Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City, and the governor of New York, the governor of New York State.
Which Cuomo is trying to shut down a hospital in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. I'm a part of this other organization that's trying to help save this particular hospital in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. They have these actions that they've been performing almost throughout the whole pandemic. They have beds, not body bags.
Right.
I talked to a few of the organizers, and Andrew Cuomo is still trying to shut down a hospital during a pandemic. And again, that's going to leave that community now with one hospital.
Yes.
They're already disenfranchised. And they don't have enough hospitals.
Right.
And this is because by removing that hospital and putting a Starbucks there or putting a condo there, they make more money. They don't make money by putting a hospital there. They make money by putting a Starbucks there. That's why they do that. And so when we bring it up, like they look at it as conspiracy theories. Like, where are you connecting the dots? So I said, well, we just pay attention to what happens, what goes there after the hospital gets shut down.
Exactly.
What transpired, after the hospital got shut down. That tells you everything you need to know. If they put like a school there or something else beneficial to the community, because I don't think a Starbucks is beneficial to the community, you can make an argument. The argument is that's not what happens ever.
Yeah. I mean, this goes back to, again, Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, saying that healthcare is a human right. And in that article, it also talks about food, clothing, healthcare, housing for everybody. And when you tie in the fact that you have, there are 4 institutions that every thriving community should have: a bank, a school, a hospital, and a grocery store. Bank, school, hospital, and grocery store. And when you take away, in nonprofit jargon, there are 2 types of anchor institutions. They're called EDs and MEDs. EDs being an educational institution like a school, university, and then MEDs, a hospital. When you take away a hospital from a community, that is an anchor institution. That is one of the 2 types of anchor institutions that keeps a community together. And it also, if you remove it, it destroys the very fabric of that community. Because that sort of anchor institution, that hospital, is a place where people can recuperate and get better. It's also a source for jobs in the community.
Absolutely.
It's a source for jobs. And you take away hospitals, you start taking away hospitals, then you're going to have more problems in those communities. And this is why we're marching on the 25th, because healthcare is a human right. And when you not only take away the ability for everybody to have medical care, which is what it says in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but then you take away the institutions to provide medical care, then again, this is something that we talked about privately in just the future steps. And we talked about this in the marketing meeting last night. One of the things that I know you're interested in doing, and something that I'm certainly interested and willing to do, is have a protest in front of the United Nations later this year.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So my plan is with our petition is to get enough signatures. Hopefully we get a lot. But also too, even if we don't, if the federal government, from any branch of the federal government, doesn't adhere to answer to the American people, I want to file a complaint at the UN. So that's the first step. The first step is just to file something to say, listen, you know, we're being denied our basic human right. Here's all the evidence of that, and we'll take it from there. You know, that's what we're doing. We're starting small, growing big. We know we're in a pandemic. We know 70% of the Americans want healthcare. We know most Americans are disenfranchised, don't have healthcare.
True.
So after that point, we're just going to file and we're going to wait and see and take it. And what I like to do is hold a press conference in front of you. And I'd like to have an event, do something to help draw attention to this, because we need to embarrass the country. We need to embarrass.
I agree.
We need to embarrass it.
Thoroughly agree. And
we can't. We need to not mince words about the fact that we're in a health crisis before the pandemic.
Yes.
And you know, I don't mind reaching out to people across the aisle, even across the country, even outside of this country, to help bring this attention. You know, seriously, we need to do this.
Brilliant. And I love what you said about outside of the country, because I'm sure you and many of the viewers and listeners know, I've been to 48 countries around the world, and I've seen what good healthcare looks like in a variety of countries, whether it's a single payer healthcare model like what you have in England, or a socialized medicine situation like you have in some countries in Europe, or whether you have a universal healthcare model like what you have in Sweden, or what you have in Germany with their public-private partnerships and nonprofit healthcare structure. So there are healthcare models that work around the country. And I've spoken about this. I spoke about this last week with my guest, Donna Al-Hassan, who is a Palestinian and a Palestinian activist. I said that the conversation with human rights violations in Israel and Palestine and the boycott, divest, and sanction movement, it's continuing to gain steam. And what we need is a response from the international community, because Americans' rights, human rights, are being violated. In addition to Article 25's human rights being violated, Article 23 is the other human right that if we're going to go ahead, when we go ahead and file this complaint, is the right to unionize.
Right.
The right to unionize. And what I would love to see happen, and Article 24 talks about fair wages and the right to have, I think, reasonable working hours. Think about how overworked all of our healthcare workers have been during this pandemic. So in addition to filing the complaint for specifically Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I think complaints citing Articles 23 and 24 must also be addressed. And we have to internationalize this struggle. And I said that.
100%. 100%.
And this can no longer be a situation where we demand healthcare through political means.
No, absolutely. It can't be done anymore. We're not going to win healthcare with politicians, with electoral solutions. I'm fine with people. They want to vote for people. I'm fine with people who want to reach out to certain politicians. I don't have any. I don't poo-poo on that at all. What's 100%. But what I do poo-poo on, what I do think is a problem, is when people think that is the only solution.
Agreed.
They don't want to look out. They don't look out at any other strategy.
Yep.
I do have a lot of folks that tell me that this is the only way, and I was like, I disagree with that. I totally disagree with that. Totally disagree with that.
Agreed. Shareef, we got about 90 seconds left. First and foremost, I know it went by quick. First and foremost, I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for not only your spirit, but your energy and effort to putting all of this together, being the mastermind and brainchild and one of the original 5 involved with putting this whole thing together. I will see you on Saturday. If there's anything else you want to share in the last 70 seconds or so, please do so.
Yeah, we're also trying to raise donations. If anyone could, small dollar donation. If everybody who's coming to our march gave $1, we will have all the money we need for these marches, because their marches are expensive. Just put in perspective, we're spending $7,000 just for DC alone.
And by the way, I was in that marketing meeting last night. LA's budget is almost twice that. It's an expensive one. There's the website there, m4m4all.org. We're on Instagram and Twitter at March4M4A. Go to the website. If you can't be there in person and you want to donate, we accept all forms of cash. If whatever we need cash, we need donations. If you want to buy some merchandise, if you want to get one of these nice shirts like we have here with a logo on the front,
right here,
get it. Okay, you can't get the yellow vests that we're wearing right now because those are exclusive. Out to Eric Kessler and with Yellow Vest Seattle for hooking us up with those. Shareef, I will see you on Saturday. Thank you again for your time. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
We have got to go. Thanks to everybody that watched and listened. Peace.
Peace.